You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin. They were all looking at me like I owed them something, like it was just a given, that I'd nod, smile, and write the damn check like I always did. My name is Daniel. I'm 38 years old, living in Portland, Oregon. And, until recently, I thought I had a marriage worth protecting. That illusion cracked wide open the day Lily's family voted. Literally voted. We were gathered in her parents' living room. Her dad, her mom, her two sisters, and her brother Ben, the star of the evening apparently. Everyone had wine. Everyone was talking over one another, except Lily. She just sat there on the couch beside me, arms crossed, not saying a word. Ben was explaining how his restaurant, the Coastal Fork, was this close to a breakthrough. He said he just needed a small infusion of cash, small being $100,000. Everyone nodded like this was reasonable, like asking me to fork over 6 figures was the same as passing the salad. We all agreed, Lily's mom said, beaming like she was unveiling some charity initiative, that you're in the best position to help. Yeah, her sister Amanda added, you've always been like the secure one, stable. What they meant was spineless. I glanced at Lily. She wasn't even looking at me, just staring off at the fireplace like this wasn't happening. I gave her a nudge. You want to jump in here? Nothing. Ben leaned forward. Look, man, this is family. We back each other up, and when your restaurant gets rolling, you'll get it all back with interest. I smiled, slowly, carefully. I had prepared for this moment. I actually came with something for the family, I said, reaching into my coat pocket. I pulled out a manila envelope and slid it onto the coffee table. Since we're making big decisions tonight, I figured you'd all want the full picture. Ben looked confused. What is it? Open it? He did, and he stopped breathing. Inside were 8 glossy photographs, followed by 20 pages of documentation, credit card receipts, texts, time-stamped GPS logs, all courtesy of the private investigator I'd hired 3 months ago. Lily's affair with her trainer, Mark, was not a rumor. It was a routine. Lily's face went white. Daniel! No, I cut her off, calm as ever. You had your turn. Amanda stood up. What the hell is this? It's my exit. I'm divorcing Lily. Papers were filed this morning. Her dad sputtered. This is how you bring it up? I figured since we're all here discussing what I owe this family, I said, it was time to show what I've been paying for. Lily finally spoke. It didn't mean anything. Don't, I said, not even looking at her. Don't insult me twice in the same night. I stood up and buttoned my jacket. I'll be taking what I'm owed, by the way. My half, the house, the car, Max, the dog. The rest, you can divide among yourselves however you like. Ben stood. You don't have to do this. I turned to him, smiling again. You're right, I don't. And with that, I walked out. It was the first time in years I didn't look back. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I left the lights off inside. Didn't want to see the living room we decorated together. The dining table where we used to eat Thai takeout. Everything in this house felt like a lie now. I sat on the edge of the couch, the PI report folder beside me, just waiting. It was almost 10 when I heard her car door shut. The front door opened a few seconds later, followed by the clack of her heels. Daniel, she called out, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't been exposed in front of her whole family an hour ago. I figured you'd be here, she said, walking in and setting her purse down. That was dramatic, you know. You could have handled it better. I didn't respond, just watched her. She crossed her arms. So, are you going to say anything or just stare at me like some disappointed principal? I picked up the folder and held it up. You want to go over it? Or should I summarize the parts where you said, and I quote, I don't feel married when I'm around him? Her jaw tightened. You had me followed? I had questions. You gave me answers. Just not the ones I expected. She scoffed and dropped onto the armchair across from me. You're blowing this out of proportion. Really? Because the timestamps say you were blowing someone else. She flinched. That's not fair. Neither was lying to my face for months. Lily shifted, now trying to sound reasonable. Look, it wasn't serious. It was just, it got away from me. Mark and he listened. He made me feel, I don't know, seen. I stood up, my voice steady. I was right there the whole time, Lily. 10 years, vacations, birthdays, doctor's appointments. I was loyal, even when you weren't interested anymore. It wasn't about loyalty, she muttered, eyes darting away. It was about connection. You've been boring, Daniel, safe, predictable. That's not a crime, but it's not exciting either. There it was, the truth. I wasn't fun enough for her. I was a mortgage payment with a heartbeat. I nodded slowly. Good to know. I'll try to keep that in mind while I'm packing. Packing, she repeated, straightening up. Where are you going? Anywhere that doesn't reek of betrayal. Come on, she said, voice rising. So I made a mistake. You're just going to walk out and throw away everything? No, I said, heading for the bedroom. You already threw it away. I'm just done pretending we can salvage the pieces. She followed me down the hall. You're not thinking straight. I started tossing clothes into a duffel bag. I've never thought more clearly in my life. You're weak, she spat suddenly. You think you're strong for leaving, but all you're doing is running. I zipped the bag and turned to her. If walking away from this means I'm weak, I'll wear it like a badge. She stood there, arms crossed, jaw tight. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Don't call, don't text. Don't send some half-assed apology through your sister. We're done. And I walked out, letting the silence swallow everything behind me. I didn't sleep. The motel room was clean enough, quiet even, but my brain wouldn't let me rest. I laid there staring at the ceiling fans spinning above me, replaying everything from the night before, like some sick highlight reel. Lily's blank stare. Her voice cold and detached. Boring, safe, predictable. That one stuck. I got up just after 4 and stood in front of the bathroom mirror. I looked older, not in the way you notice a new gray hair or wrinkle, in the way someone looks after losing something they can't name yet. 10 years. That's how long I gave her. 10 years of stability, of loyalty, of quietly stepping aside so she could shine. I let her family walk all over me because I thought that's what love meant. Enduring, sacrificing, sticking it out. Turns out, it just made me easier to ignore. By 6, I was back in my car with a stale cup of motel coffee and no destination. I didn't want to go to work, but I didn't want to sit around either. So I drove to the office anyway, pulling into the parking lot before the sun was even fully up. No one else was there yet, just me and the vending machine buzzing in the break room. I stared at my screen for hours and answered emails I barely read. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. There wasn't anything to say that wouldn't come out like a whisper of shame. By noon, I couldn't focus anymore. I stepped out for a walk. I didn't have a plan. I just kept moving until I found myself 2 blocks from the courthouse, standing in front of a lawyer's office I had Googled a month ago, but never called. The sign on the glass door said, "Open." I went in. The receptionist greeted me with a clipboard. "You looking to file?" I nodded. An hour later, I sat across from a man named Scott, who didn't ask many questions. I liked that. I handed over the PI report, gave him a rundown of the assets, and said, "I want the house, I want the car, and I want the dog." Scott raised an eyebrow. "No kids?" "No," I said. "Just Max. He's mine." By the time I left, the paperwork was started. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel relief. What I felt was clear. Like, for the first time in years, I could finally see the road in front of me without trying to squint through someone else's mess. And that was enough. For now. I parked on the street instead of the driveway. Felt symbolic, I guess. I didn't live there anymore. The front lawn hadn't been mowed. The porch light was still on, even though it was broad daylight. That was Lily, always forgetting the small things that didn't directly benefit her. I knocked once before using my old key. It still worked. Lily was in the kitchen when I walked in. She didn't look surprised, just tired. Maybe she thought that would help her case. "Hey," she said quietly. "You're early." I shrugged. Didn't think it needed to be a ceremony. "I wasn't sure if you were still coming," she added. "You've been quiet. Not much left to say." I grabbed a couple boxes I'd left in the hallway and headed toward the bedroom. Max's collar jingled as he padded into the room from wherever he'd been hiding. He came right to me, tail wagging, like he'd been waiting for this moment too. "I washed his bed," Lily said from the doorway. "Figured you'd want to take it." "Thanks." I didn't look at her. The room was half empty already. I hadn't brought much with me when I left, just what I needed to get by. Now I was taking the rest. Old photos, my watch box, a couple of shirts Lily always said made me look too square. Funny how I didn't care about her opinions anymore. "Can we talk?" she asked finally. Just for a minute. I sat on the edge of the bed. Talk. I know I messed up, but maybe we shouldn't throw everything away. We built a life together. I met her eyes. You tore it down. I got lost, Daniel. I wasn't happy. That doesn't mean I didn't love you. Lying for a year is a strange way to show love. She crossed her arms, frustrated now. God, you're so stubborn. This martyr routine, it's exhausting. And you were never bored, right? I stood. Until I stopped paying for your brother's business or picking up your dry cleaning or acting like everything was fine. She rolled her eyes. You were never exciting, Daniel. That was the problem. There it was. I nodded slowly, grabbed Max's leash, and walked toward the door. Thanks for the honesty. She followed me. You're seriously leaving like this? No, I turned to her. I left the moment you decided I wasn't enough. Then I opened the door, stepped out with Max at my side, and didn't look back. That version of my life, the one where I bent until I broke, was over. The first night in the apartment, Max refused to sleep in his bed. He curled up right next to mine, head resting on my arm like he knew I needed it. The place was small. 2 rooms, a crooked window over the sink, floors that creaked every time I moved. But it was mine. No echoes of arguments, no passive-aggressive notes on the fridge, just quiet. I spent the weekend unpacking, organizing the little things that felt like pieces of myself, my records. The good knives Lily always said were too expensive. A beat-up journal I hadn't touched in years. On Monday, I set my alarm for 5. By 5:30, I was outside, running. It wasn't fast or graceful. The cold stung my lungs, my legs ached after the first mile, and I almost turned around twice. But something told me to keep going. I didn't realize until I stopped by the river that I'd been holding my breath for years. Back at the apartment, Max greeted me like I'd been gone for a week. I fed him, made coffee, and sat at the table. Not with a phone in my hand, not with emails to check. Just me and the quiet hum of the morning. That became my routine. Mornings for running, evenings for cooking again, real cooking. Sauteing onions, seasoning without a recipe, leaving the dishes in the sink until tomorrow. I started writing in that old journal again, not because I had anything profound to say, but because it helped sort the noise in my head. Some days I only wrote a sentence. Some days I filled a page. By the second week, I found a used record store down the block. The guy behind the counter was in his 60s and didn't say much, which suited me fine. I bought a couple albums and played them on low while I worked late into the night. Max stuck to me like glue, always watching, always nearby. He didn't ask questions or expect anything. He just showed up, every time. And somehow, that mattered more than all the words Lily had ever said. One morning, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired, sure, but also lighter, like some invisible weight had finally slipped off my shoulders. I wasn't healed, not yet, but I wasn't broken either. I was something in between, rebuilding, slowly, one quiet moment at a time, and for the first time in forever, that felt like enough. It was a crisp Saturday morning, the kind where the streets still smelled like dew and the air bit at your lungs. I'd gotten into the habit of running a new route every week. Something about not retracing old steps felt right. I was maybe 2 miles in when I saw him. Mark. He was standing outside a gas station just off Division, leaning against the wall like he owned it. His arm was draped lazily around a woman who couldn't have been more than 25. Blonde, glossy hair, phone in one hand, iced coffee in the other. He saw me before I could look away. Well, he called out, grinning. If it isn't Mr. Perfect. I didn't stop. Just kept my pace steady. That say hi to Lily for me, he added, loud enough for everyone at the pumps to hear. I didn't even flinch. That used to be the kind of moment that would derail my whole day, send me into a spiral of replaying everything, wondering what I missed, what I should have done differently. But now, it felt like nothing. Just a passing blip on the radar. I ran until the sun was high and my legs burned. By the time I got back to the apartment, Max was waiting by the door like always, tail thumping against the floor. I showered, threw on jeans, and made one phone call. Scott, I said when my lawyer answered. Let's stop dragging this out. I want everything finalized. Whatever she's doing now, I don't care. Let her have Mark. Let her have brunch dates and gym selfies and family drama. I want out. He gave me a low chuckle. That sounds like closure to me. Feels like it. I hung up and stood by the window, watching traffic move below. There was something solid about the stillness, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Seeing Mark didn't bother me. It didn't spark jealousy or rage or sadness. It just reminded me how far I'd come, how much lighter life felt without carrying other people's lies on my back. I scratched Max behind the ears and said, "Let's move forward." He looked up at me with those eyes, like he already knew. And we did. Emma texted me out of the blue. "Can we meet? Just talk, please." I waited a day before responding. Not because I needed time to think, I already knew the answer, but because I didn't owe anyone my immediacy anymore. We met at a little cafe off Burnside. Neutral ground, public enough to keep things civil. She was already sitting when I arrived, 2 coffees on the table. Black for me, she remembered. "Thanks," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. She smiled weakly. "You look good." I nodded. "I feel good." Emma didn't waste time. "Lily's not doing well. She barely eats. She cries all the time." I sipped the coffee. "That sounds like the aftermath of choices catching up." "She regrets it," Emma said, leaning in. "She knows she screwed up." "She didn't just screw up," I said calmly. "She lived a double life for over a year. Lied straight to my face every day. That's not a mistake. That's a habit." Emma's face fell. "You were married for 10 years, Daniel. That means something." "It did," I said. "I fought for it, even when she didn't." She hesitated, then said, "She misses you." "No," I said. "She misses the version of me who picked up after her, funded her family's bad decisions, and accepted her silence like it was love. That guy's gone." Emma looked like she wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. I thought maybe you'd want to know." "I appreciate the gesture," I said. "But you don't need to keep being her messenger. You're not responsible for cleaning up her mess." She blinked. "You really aren't open to trying again?" I leaned back in my chair. "I gave that woman a decade of my life. She gave me excuses. I'm done trying to figure out which version of her was real." Emma stared at her coffee. "She said you'd say that." I stood up, sliding my chair back quietly. "Then she knows me better than I thought." Emma looked up, eyes sad but resigned. "You really loved her, didn't you?" "Yeah," I said, grabbing my jacket. "And that's exactly why I had to leave." I walked out of the cafe and into the afternoon sun. No pit in my stomach, no lingering doubt. Just a quiet, steady certainty that I was finally free from all of it. The lies, the guilt, the need to prove myself to people who never saw me clearly. I didn't owe anyone anything, not anymore. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Thursday. I didn't cry, I didn't even pause. I signed my name at the bottom of the last page, handed the pen back to Scott, and walked out of his office with Max's leash in one hand and a manila envelope in the other. On the way home, I stopped by a diner and had pancakes for lunch. I hadn't done that in years. Lily hated breakfast after 10, said it made her feel sluggish. I ate every bite. That night, I sat by the window with a beer and watched the storm roll in. Thunder in the distance, Max curled at my feet, a record spinning softly in the background. Something about the moment felt like closure, not the kind people chase with dramatic speeches or big gestures, the quiet kind, the real kind. Over the next few weeks, I focused on building something new, not just a routine, but a life that didn't revolve around making someone else comfortable. I read more, started taking long walks without a destination, went to a woodworking class on a whim, and built a crooked little spice rack that I proudly nailed into the kitchen wall. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. One Saturday afternoon, I wandered into a used bookstore near Hawthorne. It smelled like dust and old pages, the kind of place you could get lost in for hours. That's where I met Julia. She was thumbing through a copy of Slaughterhouse-Five in the same aisle as me. We made a little joke about the title, and before I knew it, we were talking about everything from Vonnegut to bad coffee to failed marriages. She wasn't flashy. She didn't talk like she had something to prove. She just listened, and that felt rare. We met for coffee a week later, then a walk in the park. Nothing heavy, no pressure. For the first time in a long time, I let someone get to know me, not the version I edited for someone else, but the real me. I talked about Max, my messed up attempts at cooking Thai food, My dad's old guitar I'd been too afraid to pick up again. Julia didn't fill the silence. She didn't try to fix me, she just showed up. And maybe that was the point. I wasn't looking to be saved. I'd already done the saving. What I wanted, what I was finally ready for, was something honest, something still growing. I wasn't defined by Lily anymore. I wasn't broken or bitter. I was just Daniel, and that was enough. It had been a few months since I'd signed the papers when I saw her again. I was standing in the frozen food aisle at Trader Joe's, debating between two kinds of dumplings, when I heard her voice behind me. "Daniel?" I turned. Lily stood there in workout gear, her cart half full, a surprised smile creeping onto her face like she'd just bumped into an old friend. "Hey," I said, neutral. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Wow, you look different." "I feel different." There was a pause. She stared at me like she didn't know what to say next. Then she stepped closer, her voice soft. "I've been thinking about you a lot." I didn't respond. I just raised my eyebrows slightly, waiting. "I miss what we had," she continued. "I miss you." I almost laughed, but not out of spite. It was the absurdity of it, the way she stood there, hoping I'd forget everything like it was water under the bridge. "No," I said quietly. "You miss the life I gave you, the comfort, the stability. You miss not having to answer for anything." She looked stung, her eyes narrowing slightly. "That's not fair." "It's honest," I said. "You lied, repeatedly. You let your family walk all over me, and you watched it happen like you weren't part of it." "I made mistakes," she said, voice sharper now. "But I was going through things too. You think you were some perfect husband?" "No," I said. "But I was loyal, I tried, and you threw that away." There was a beat of silence between us, then she sighed. "So that's it?" I nodded. "That's it. You don't get access to my peace. Not anymore." She blinked rapidly, like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. I turned back to the freezer, grabbed the chicken dumplings, and walked past her without looking back. As I stepped outside into the warm spring air, a strange calm settled over me. Not triumph, not anger, just clarity. There were no lingering strings, no unfinished conversations. I had closed the book, not just the chapter. Whatever Lily thought she missed wasn't me. It was what I gave, and I was finally done giving to people who didn't value it. I drove home, Max waiting by the door, my record player humming in the background. That was the last time I saw her, and I felt nothing but peace. Saturday mornings used to mean walking on eggshells, trying not to say the wrong thing before Lily had her first coffee. Now, they meant pancakes, jazz on the radio, and Max dozing under the kitchen table while sunlight crept in through the window. Life was simple, and that simplicity felt like luxury. I had finally found a rhythm. I'd go to work, come home, cook something halfway decent, take Max for a walk, maybe read a chapter or two of whatever was on my nightstand. It wasn't exciting by anyone else's standards, but for me, it was exactly right. I reconnected with people I'd let drift. Old friends from college, coworkers I used to keep at a distance because Lily never liked me wasting time on people who didn't matter. Now I understood how deeply that mindset had shaped my life. One evening, I stopped by a community center after seeing a flyer for a beginner's guitar group. My hands were clumsy at first, but there was something grounding in the repetition, the familiar feel of strings beneath my fingers, like an old part of me had never really left. And then there was Julia. We weren't rushing into anything. We'd see each other now and then, grab coffee, swap book recommendations, share little pieces of our lives without pressure. She never asked for more than I could give. She never tried to fix me. That alone felt like a revelation. We sat on a park bench one breezy afternoon, watching kids play soccer while Max gnawed on a stick nearby. Julia leaned back and said, "You seem lighter these days." I smiled without thinking. I think I finally stopped dragging dead weight. That's what the last few months had been, a slow unburdening, letting go of who I had tried to be for someone else, of guilt, of anger, of the fantasy that things could have gone differently if only I'd worked harder, been more patient, more forgiving. The truth was, I had done enough, and now I was free. I didn't know where the road ahead would lead, whether Julia and I would become something more, or if I'd find a new passion that changed everything. But for the first time in years, the unknown didn't scare me. It felt full of possibility. I had no grand plans, just peace, space to grow, and a life that finally belonged to me, and that was more than enough.